I never imagined that the decision I made on a rainy Tuesday afternoon would change the entire course of my life. If someone had told me years ago that a poor, struggling girl like me would one day be standing inside the marble halls of a billionaire's mansion, carrying a child, I would have laughed and walked away. But life has a cruel sense of irony. It doesn't ask whether you are ready, whether you are capable, or whether you even want the story it's about to throw at you. It simply unfolds, like a script written long before you ever learned to read. That day, I was soaked from the storm, my shoes worn thin, and my umbrella useless against the downpour. I remember staring at the reflection of my tired face in a store window, with my hair plastered to my cheeks and my eyes filled with that dull kind of exhaustion that only comes from fighting every single day just to survive. Rent was overdue. My mother's medicine was running out. The landlord had already slipped a final notice under our door. And I'd just been let go from my third part-time job that month because the cafe I worked at couldn't afford to keep extra staff. I felt like the world was closing in on me. Like no matter how fast I tried to run, my circumstances always found a way to tie themselves around my ankles. Poverty isn't just about having no money. It's about the constant humiliation, the gnawing hunger, the cold nights where you lie awake wondering if tomorrow will finally be the day you break. And I was close to breaking. When I walked into that recruitment agency, it wasn't because I believed in miracles. It was because I was desperate. The sign outside had promised life-changing opportunities and immediate placements. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and printer ink, and the receptionist barely glanced at me as she slid a form across the counter. I filled in my details with trembling hands, trying not to think about how this might just be another dead end. But then something strange happened. The woman behind the desk, with her sleek hair and sharp glasses, looked up at me after reading my file. Her gaze lingered longer than usual, as if she saw something in me that even I couldn't see. "You might be suitable," she murmured, "though it's not a standard position. It's unconventional." I frowned, unsure what she meant, but when she leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, my heart began to race. "There's a private client. Wealthy. Very, very wealthy. He's looking for a surrogate." The word hit me like a slap. Surrogate? My first instinct was to get up and leave. Carrying someone else's child wasn't just unconventional. It was terrifying. It felt wrong, even scandalous. But then she mentioned the money. Enough to cover my mother's hospital bills. Enough to clear the debts that were suffocating us. Enough to change everything. And in that moment, my desperation drowned out my fear. The next week was a blur. Meetings with lawyers who spoke in circles, contracts thicker than my entire college textbooks, medical checkups under sterile white lights. Each step felt unreal, like I was watching someone else walk this path while I drifted just a few steps behind, tuning them to stop it. And then came the meeting, the one that would alter not just my circumstances, but my heart. I'll never forget the first time I saw him. He was everything you would expect a billionaire to be. Impeccably dressed, his suit tailored so perfectly it looked like it had been stitched directly onto him. His eyes were a piercing gray, the kind that seemed to see straight through you, stripping away all the layers you try to hide behind. His presence filled the room before he even spoke a word. And when he finally did, his voice was calm, low, commanding. "I want to be very clear," he said, his gaze locked on me like I was the only person in the world. "This is a business arrangement. Nothing more." I nodded because what else could I do? I was poor, and he was powerful. He didn't want love, or companionship, or even a conversation. He wanted an heir, and I was simply the vessel he would use to get it. But life, as I've said before, doesn't always follow the contracts we sign. At first, our interactions were minimal. He stayed in his world of boardrooms and luxury cars, while I stayed tucked away in a private wing of his estate, monitored by nurses and doctors who made sure everything was progressing as planned. I would see him occasionally, brief, polite visits where he asked if I was comfortable, if I needed anything, though his eyes always betrayed a distance, as if he didn't dare step too close. And yet, it was in the quiet moments, the ones no contract could prepare us for, that something unexpected began to stir. Like the night when the power went out during a storm, and I found myself in the kitchen, fumbling with candles, only to see him standing there, his hair damp from the rain, looking more human than I had ever seen him. He laughed softly when I nearly dropped the matches, and for a split second, the billionaire and the poor girl were just two people caught in the dark. Or the morning when he caught me in the garden, barefoot and humming an old lullaby my mother used to sing. He didn't say anything at first, just watched quietly, and when our eyes met, there was something softer in his expression, something almost vulnerable. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it meant nothing. But deep down, a seed had been planted, and it was growing in places I didn't even know existed. And so, what began as survival slowly started to feel like something more. Something dangerous. Something I couldn't admit, even to myself. Because how could a poor girl like me, hired only to carry a billionaire's child, dare to fall in love with a man who had bought her future? Falling in love with him was never part of the plan. In fact, it was the one thing I swore I would never allow. This was supposed to be a transaction, a lifeline I had grabbed onto when I was drowning. I was meant to carry his child, deliver it safely, and walk away with enough money to finally give my mother the care she deserved. Nothing more, nothing less. But life doesn't care about plans. It started quietly, like the slow drip of water that eventually carved a canyon. The small, unguarded moments kept piling up, and before I knew it, I found myself noticing things I shouldn't. The way his voice softened whenever he asked about the baby. The way his eyes lingered on me when he thought I wasn't looking. The way he always seemed to appear at the exact moment I felt loneliest. I told myself it was impossible. He was untouchable, living in a world so far above mine it might as well have been another universe. He had everything: wealth, status, power. I had nothing. Just a body being borrowed for 9 months, and a heart that was betraying me more with every beat. The conflict wasn't just inside me, it was everywhere. His family disapproved of me from the start. They didn't say it outright, but their polite smiles and cold eyes told me everything I needed to know. To them, I was an intruder, a nobody who had been plucked from the gutter to serve a purpose. At one dinner, his sister leaned close enough for only me to hear and whispered, "Don't mistake your role here. You're not one of us. You never will be." Her words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I spent nights crying into my pillow, my hands resting on the small swell of my stomach, whispering apologies to the life growing inside me. I didn't want this child to feel unwanted, unloved. But sometimes I wondered if maybe I was making a mistake. If maybe bringing a baby into a world so full of judgment and cruelty was unfair. And then there was him, the man who hired me, the man whose child I was carrying, the man who didn't know that every time he walked into a room, my pulse quickened like I was a teenager with a crush. I hated myself for it. I hated how much power he had over me without even trying. I hated how easily he could undo me with a single glance. The real breaking point came one evening, months into the arrangement. I had been sick all day, nausea, exhaustion, the kind of fatigue that felt like my bones were turning to sand. I didn't want to bother anyone, so I stayed in my room, curled up under the blanket, too weak to eat. But when he found out, he stormed into the nurse's quarters, demanding why no one had checked on me. And then he came to me. He sat on the edge of my bed, his face drawn with worry. "Why didn't you tell anyone you were feeling this bad?" I didn't want to be a burden, I whispered. Something flickered in his eyes. Anger, but not at me. Anger at himself. He reached out, hesitated, then gently brushed the damp hair off my forehead. His touch was careful, almost reverent, like he was afraid I would break. "You're not a burden," he said, his voice low. "Not to me." Those 4 words shattered every wall I had built around my heart. I lay there, staring at him, and for the first time I saw not the billionaire, not the powerful man who could buy anything he wanted, but just a human being, a man with shadows in his eyes and cracks in his armor. And I realized with a kind of quiet horror that I wasn't just falling for him. I had already fallen. But love in a situation like this is a dangerous thing. It doesn't come wrapped in happiness or safety. It comes with fear, with guilt, with the knowledge that every step forward might lead to heartbreak. Because no matter how many soft words he spoke, no matter how tender his touch became, I couldn't escape the truth. I was carrying his child. And when that child was born, where would that leave me? The conflict grew sharper each day. The closer we became, the more I dreaded the inevitable ending. I wanted to hate him for putting me in this position, for blurring the lines of a deal that should have been simple. But every time I looked into his eyes, I saw pieces of myself reflected back. My loneliness, my longing, my desperate need to be seen and cherished. There were nights when I lay awake, wondering if I should run. Take what little I had, disappear before my heart became too entangled. But then I would feel the baby kick and I knew I couldn't. I was tied to him in ways no contract could ever define. And perhaps the cruelest twist of all was that he seemed to feel it too. One evening, as we walked through the garden, he stopped suddenly. The air was heavy with the scent of roses, the sky streaked with the fading light of dusk. He turned to me, his expression unreadable, and said, "You've changed things for me." My breath caught. "What do you mean?" He shook his head, almost as if he regretted saying it, but his eyes betrayed him. They were softer, warmer than I had ever seen. "You make this house feel less empty." For a moment, silence wrapped around us, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. But then, just as quickly, the fear returned. Because hope is dangerous when you know the story you're living in isn't meant to have a happy ending. The conflict inside me was tearing me apart. I wanted him, but I also wanted freedom. I needed him, but I also needed to protect myself. I loved him, but I was terrified that once the child was born, I would become invisible again, discarded, forgotten, left with nothing but a broken heart and memories that would haunt me forever. And as much as I tried to bury it, one question kept echoing in my mind, louder and louder each day. What if love was never part of his plan? The night everything changed didn't announce itself with thunder or fireworks. It slipped in quietly, disguised as just another evening, and yet I knew from the first moment that something was different. Dinner had ended awkwardly. His family was there again, cold smiles, sharp words hidden behind polished manners. His sister's whispers had become bolder lately, her disdain less hidden. She looked me up and down as though I were dirt tracked across her marble floors. "This charade can't last forever," she said when no one else could hear. "You're just the hired help. Don't confuse this arrangement with something real." I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that I wasn't imagining the way her brother's eyes lingered on mine, the way his voice softened around me. But deep down, I feared she was right. That all of this, the house, the care, the attention, was temporary. That once the baby was born, I'd be nothing more than a forgotten chapter in his story. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood by the window of my room, staring at the city lights in the distance, my hands resting protectively on the curve of my belly. The baby kicked, almost as if sensing my turmoil. And then the door opened. He stepped inside, his jacket still on, his tie loosened, his eyes shadowed with something I couldn't read. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched between us, heavy and unspoken. "Why are you awake?" he asked finally, his voice low. "I could ask you the same thing," I replied, turning back to the window. "Your family made it pretty clear tonight that I don't belong here." He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "Don't listen to them. They don't decide what belongs in my life." "I do." Something about the way he said it made my heart race. I turned, searching his face, trying to understand what he wasn't saying. "Why do you keep doing this?" I whispered, "Being kind to me, defending me, acting like I matter when we both know I don't." The look in his eyes shifted then, no longer guarded, no longer distant. It was raw, almost pained. He took a step closer, then another, until he was standing right in front of me. "You think you don't matter?" His voice was fierce now, quiet but burning. "Do you have any idea what you've done to me? To this house? To my life?" I swallowed hard, my breath caught in my chest. "What do you mean?" He shook his head as if he couldn't find the right words. His hand lifted, hesitated, then brushed against mine where it rested on my stomach. His touch was trembling, vulnerable in a way I had never seen before. "You were supposed to be just an arrangement," he whispered. "A contract, a solution. But every day, you've changed me. I don't even recognize myself anymore. I find myself looking for you in every room, wondering what you're thinking, wanting to hear your laugh. needing to know you're okay. You make me. His voice broke and he closed his eyes. You make me feel alive again. The world seemed to tilt. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. I had dreamed of hearing those words, but now that they were real, I didn't know how to breathe. You can't say things like that, I whispered, tears burning my eyes. It's not fair. Not when I don't know if you mean them, or if I'm just imagining everything. His eyes flew open, and the storm inside them nearly undid me. He reached up, cupping my face in his hands, forcing me to look at him. You're not imagining it, he said, his voice trembling. I try to fight it. God knows I tried, but it's too late. I'm in love with you. The words shattered the walls I had been holding up for months. Tears spilled down my cheeks, and before I could stop myself, I whispered back the truth I had been burying all along. I love you too. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full, bursting with everything we had both been too afraid to say. And then he kissed me. It wasn't the careful, restrained kiss of a man trying to maintain control. It was desperate, hungry, like a dam finally breaking. I melted into him, every part of me surrendering to the truth we had both denied for so long. The world outside disappeared. There was no contract, no family disapproval, no fear of what came after. There was only us, two broken people who had found something neither of us had been looking for. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, his forehead rested against mine. We'll figure it out, he whispered. Whatever it takes. I don't care what anyone thinks. I don't care about the deal. I can't lose you. And in that moment, I believed him. But love, especially love born out of impossible circumstances, is never simple. The very next morning, the consequences began. His family found out. His sister stormed into my room, her fury like ice. You've trapped him, she spat. Do you think we're blind? You're nothing but a gold digger. You'll never be one of us. I tried to defend myself, but the words tangled on my tongue. Her accusations echoed the fears I already carried. That maybe I wasn't good enough, that maybe he would one day wake up and realize she was right. And yet, when I saw him later, his jaw clenched and his eyes burning with defiance, I knew he wasn't going to let them tear us apart. But deep down, I also knew that the hardest battles were still to come, because loving him wasn't just about us anymore. It was about the child I carried, the family that wanted me gone, and the world that would never understand how a poor girl could fall in love with a billionaire and have him love her back. That night had been our climax, our breaking point. But the story wasn't finished. In many ways, it was only just beginning. If love were simple, we would have stayed in that moment forever. His forehead against mine, the world shut out, the two of us bound together by something stronger than any contract. But love, especially the kind that comes wrapped in secrets and scandal, is never allowed to remain untouched. The morning after our confession, reality returned with claws sharp enough to shred everything we had built. It started with his sister. She burst into my room like a storm, her heels clicking against the marble floor, her voice a hiss of venom. Do you think you've won? She spat, her eyes burning with hatred. You've seduced him, haven't you? That's your little plan. Trap him with emotions so you can rise above your station. I froze, clutching my stomach instinctively. Her words were knives, each one cutting into the very fears I tried to silence at night. That I wasn't enough, that I didn't belong, that one day he would see me for what I truly was, a poor girl pretending to fit into a world that was never mine. He loves me, I whispered, surprising even myself with the steadiness of my voice. Her laughter was sharp and cruel. Love, she sneered. My brother doesn't love. He doesn't even understand the word. Don't fool yourself into thinking this is some fairy tale. You're temporary, and when this charade ends, you'll be forgotten. I wanted to scream to defend myself, but the truth was I didn't know if she was wrong. What if I was temporary? What if his word from the night before had been nothing more than fleeting emotion, spoken in a moment of weakness? But when he came to me later that day, I saw no weakness in his eyes, only fire. I don't care what they say, he told me, his voice low but resolute. They spent their whole lives telling me who I should be, what I should want. But this time I choose. I choose you. For a heartbeat, hope flared inside me. But the escalation didn't stop with family disapproval. Rumors began to spread, whispered first in hushed tones, and then shouted in society columns. Headlines speculated about the mysterious woman living in his estate. Paparazzi camped outside the gates. Every photo, every headline, every cruel comment online painted me as a manipulative gold digger. The weight of it crushed me. I couldn't even step outside without feeling their eyes on me, their judgment pressing down on my chest until I could barely breathe. I found myself retreating further into my room, the walls closing in tighter each day. And yet, he never wavered. He stood by me, publicly and privately, his arm firm around my shoulders, his voice steady when he told the world to leave me alone. But the more he fought for me, the more vicious the attacks became. Investors pulled out of his projects. Board members questioned his judgment. His empire began to tremble, and I knew it was because of me. That guilt ate at me night after night. One evening, as he sat across from me in the library, exhaustion carved into his face, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "This is destroying you," I whispered. "Your family hates me. The world hates me. You're losing everything because of me." He looked up sharply, his eyes blazing. "Don't you dare say that. You're not the reason. They are. Their hatred, their greed, their inability to accept that I'm allowed to be happy. That's the reason. Not you. But if I wasn't here, if you weren't here," he cut in fiercely, standing now, his voice trembling with emotion, "I'd still be an empty man in an empty house. Don't you get it? You've already given me more than anyone else ever has. You've given me something to live for." His words broke me. I cried that night in his arms, not because I didn't believe him, but because I knew love wasn't always enough to silence the world. And the world didn't stop testing us. One evening, after a particularly brutal article was published about me, I received a call from the recruitment agency that had first brought me into this arrangement. The woman's voice was cold, detached. "You violated the terms," she said. "This was supposed to be a professional arrangement, and now it's a scandal. If you continue down this path, you could face legal consequences." Legal consequences. The words chill me to my core. I was carrying his child, a life that had started because of a contract. What if they tried to take the baby from me? What if they argued I wasn't fit to keep it because of my emotional entanglement? Fear gripped me in ways I couldn't describe. That night, as he held me close, I whispered the truth of my terror. "What if they take the baby? What if they take you?" He tightened his arms around me, his voice a vow. "I won't let that happen. Not to you. Not to our child. They'll have to go through me first." But even as he said it, I knew the escalation wasn't done. The storm wasn't over. It was only just gathering its strength. Because when love dares to bloom in places it shouldn't, the world doesn't simply watch. It fights back, harder, crueler, until it forces you to choose, surrender, or risk everything for the chance at happiness. And as much as I loved him, I couldn't escape the question that haunted me in the dark. Would love be enough to withstand the war we were about to face? The estate was unusually quiet, but it wasn't the peaceful kind of silence. It was heavy, suffocating, the kind that pressed against your skin and made your pulse quicken with dread. I sat alone in my room, staring at the contract spread out on the desk. The same contract that had once felt like salvation but now looked like chains. Words that had promised security now threatened everything I loved. Earlier that day, the agency's lawyers had visited. Their faces were cold, their tone sharp. They reminded me that I had signed away certain rights, that I was bound to deliver a child and walk away. Nothing more. No claims, no future, no love. If I dared to defy the terms, they would drag me into court, expose me, humiliate me, and maybe even strip me of the baby. When they left, I collapsed onto the bed, sobbing until my chest ached. The cruel irony was unbearable. Love had given me strength, but it also made me the most vulnerable I had ever been. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear before the storm swallowed us both. But then he came. He found me in the dark, the contract still open on the desk. His eyes scanned it quickly, then shifted to me, filled with something that broke my heart. Pain, anger, fear, but above all, determination. You're thinking of leaving, he said softly. Tears spilled down my cheeks. I don't want to ruin you. You've lost so much already. Your family, your business deals, your reputation. And now they're threatening to take the baby. I can't let you lose everything because of me. He crossed the room in 2 strides, pulling me into his arms before I could fall apart completely. His embrace was fierce, desperate. Listen to me, he whispered into my hair. I don't care about the money. I don't care about the board. I don't care what the world thinks. I care about you. I care about our child. That's all that matters. But the contract, let them try. He cut me off, his voice trembling with fury. Let them take me to court. Let them drag my name through the mud. I'll fight them with everything I have because you are not leaving and this child is not theirs. You're mine. You both are. Something inside me cracked thin, the last bit of resistance I had been clinging to. For months I had told myself I was temporary, disposable, just a vessel. But in his eyes, I saw the truth. He didn't see me as a mistake or a burden. He saw me as the woman he loved, the mother of his child, the one who had turned his empty house into a home. The weeks that followed were a blur of battles. Lawyers, family confrontations, endless nights of whispered fears and fragile hope. His sister launched attack after attack, desperate to drive me away. The press hounded us, painting me as a villain. And through it all, my body grew heavier, my steps slower, as the baby inside me grew stronger with each passing day. The final test came the night I went into labor. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside me. Thunder crashing, lightning tearing the sky apart. Pain racked my body, fear clawing at my chest. I had never felt so fragile, so breakable. And yet, through every scream, every tear, he was there, holding my hand, whispering that I was strong, that I could do this, that we were almost at the end of the battle. Hours later, when I heard our child's first cry, something inside me shifted forever. They placed the baby in my arms, and I wept, not just from the pain, but from the overwhelming flood of love. This wasn't just his child. It was our child, a symbol of everything we had endured, everything we had fought for. I looked up at him, exhausted, tears streaming down my face, and whispered, "We made it." He bent down, pressing his forehead to mine, his own eyes glistening. "No," he said softly. "You made it. You saved me. You gave me everything I never knew I needed." In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the contract, not the world outside, not the people who had tried to break us. All that mattered was the tiny heartbeat against my chest and a man whose love had carried me through the darkest nights. The resolution wasn't loud or triumphant. It was quiet, gentle. It was the 3 of us together, a family born out of struggle, sealed by love. And though I knew challenges would come again, I also knew one unshakable truth. We had already survived the worst. And love, our love, had won. While I look back now, it almost feels like a dream. There are moments that still blur together. The contract, the fear, the judgment, the nights I wondered if I was strong enough to survive. But there are also moments that shine so brightly in my memory that they outshine all the darkness. The first time I felt my baby's kick, the first time his laughter filled the empty halls, the night he confessed he loved me. I was hired to carry a billionaire's child. That was the role the world gave me. But life had other plans. In the process of carrying his child, I carried something else too, his heart, and he carried mine. For a long time, I believed love wasn't meant for people like me. Love was for the lucky, the privileged, the ones who had enough money and power to shape the world around them. I thought my place was always going to be in the shadows, invisible, unworthy of something as powerful as love. But love doesn't care about status. It doesn't care about contracts or bank accounts or the cruel things people whisper. Love is wild, unpredictable, uncontainable. It finds you in the most impossible places, like a mansion where you're only supposed to be temporary, like a man who swore he would never let his heart be touched again. If there's one lesson my story has taught me, it's this: sometimes the very thing you think will break you is what saves you. I thought I was selling my future when I signed that contract, but instead, I found my future in the most unexpected way. And maybe that's the message I want you to take with you right now as you sit here listening to my story. Maybe you're going through something that feels impossible. Maybe the world has told you you're not good enough, not strong enough, not worthy of love or happiness. Maybe your life feels like it's nothing but contracts and obligations, like you're just surviving from one day to the next. But listen to me, don't give up, because sometimes life hides its greatest blessings inside the very storms that threaten to drown you. Sometimes the pain you're carrying is preparing you for the love you never saw coming. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever felt like the world decided your worth before you even had a chance to prove yourself, then let my story remind you. You are not defined by where you start. You are defined by the love you give, the battles you fight, and the courage you find when everything seems lost. I was just a poor girl, desperate to survive. I walked into a deal thinking I was selling away my body and my choices. But what I didn't know was that life was leading me toward the one thing I had been missing all along. Someone who saw me, truly saw me, and chose me even when the world told him not to. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this. Don't stop believing that love is out there for you too. The world will always try to convince you that you're not enough. But love doesn't listen to the world. Love listens to the quiet ache in your heart, the one that whispers, maybe there's more waiting for me. And when it comes, because it will, you'll realize something I only learned when it was almost too late. Love is not just about being chosen. It's about choosing back, choosing to fight, choosing to stay, choosing to believe, even when the odds are stacked against you. I was hired to carry a billionaire's child, but in the end, I carried love. And that love carried me. Broken Heart Sparkles, if this story touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, because maybe someone you know is right now standing where I once stood, alone, afraid, convinced they have no future. Maybe your share is the reminder they need, the spark of hope that tells them their story isn't over yet. Because if there's one thing I know for certain, it's this. Love has a way of finding us in the most impossible places. And when it does, it changes everything.